All right, welcome everyone to today's Google Webmaster Central Office Hours Hangout. My name is John Mueller. I'm a Webmaster Trends Analyst here at Google in Switzerland. And part of what we do is talk with webmasters and publishers, like the ones here in the Hangout and the ones that have submitted lots of questions already. As always, the posts that we do on Google+ are available for you to add your questions in there, to +1 the questions that you think are interesting that we should look into. And I'll try to run through a bunch of those. And maybe to start off with, I'd like to give those of you who are here live a chance to ask the first questions.
If possible, I will try to use one of the questions I asked in the thread too, but bring it in front.
OK.
OK, what I wanted to ask, I am a teacher. A blog where I post mostly academic stuff, but not necessarily only that. And there are a lot of my students who link to my site from their own blogs. More exactly, most of them link to my site from their blog roles. The problem is that's a collection of links, practically, quite a lot of them in many cases. And a lot of links to my site came from such links from our people blog roles. They are all natural. They are, there is nothing artificial. There is nothing paid or anything like that. It's just that a lot of them, they are site-wide, being in blog roles. They are next to other links which link to other sites, blogs, which I don't know if they are good quality or bad quality or anything like that. Are these kind of links good for me, bad for me? Is Google giving me credit for them? Is Google penalizing me for them? Is discounting them? Should I disavow them? Should I don't worry?
I like that last option. In general, if these are normal links, organic links that are happening, that are pointing at your content, then I would just let them be. That's the way the internet works. People link to your content. If your students have blogs and they think, oh, this is actually a teacher that knows what he's talking about, then that's a good link. That's not something you need to disavow just because maybe it's a site-wide link or in the blog role.
Yeah, that's the problem. That yeah, there are links from inside the articles where they say, hey, look, here's a good course or some good resources or whatever. But most of them are from blog roles. Wouldn't that look artificial?
No, not necessarily. No. I wouldn't worry about like where people are linking from. If these are organic links that are at your site, that's perfectly fine.
So in best case scenario, I get credit for them. In worst case scenario, Google will discount them, but nothing to worry about being penalized or anything like that.
Exactly, yeah.
OK, thank you a lot. I will stop here. Eventually come later with another one.
OK.
Are you ever going to talk, are you ever going to create an episode just for the discount of links? Like a hangout just for that kind of subject? Because, I mean, I still feel like, I mean, it's discounted. How so? Like, so if you had, let's say, 5 bad links and that link, I think there was an example there from like the New York Times. So that New York Times link will also be discounted by accident, or no, it won't, right? I mean, it's just still a gray area there with this whole discounted thing going on.
Yeah, but I mean, in general, that's not really something you need to worry that much about.
Okay.
So that's kind of the way our algorithms are picking up these links and trying to figure out how should we treat these links. And that's something that we've been doing in the past as well. That's kind of even in the basis of PageRank, in the sense that not all links are the same, and we need to figure out how to kind of value the individual links. But that's not something that, as a webmaster, you really need to worry about, because you can't really control that, right?
Right.
That's from that point of view, it's hard to say we could do like a whole hangout just on links, because ideally in the background there's this kind of big sign saying you shouldn't be playing with links. And if we're like talking the whole time about how to make links look natural, then that's essentially kind of contradicting the other one, right?
Right. So you guys will just kind of recalculate, redo the whole thing on your end, and then the algo will decide what is discounted, what is not, and
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, we can't see it. So
yeah, I totally understand the worry from the webmaster side, and there are a bunch of questions around links in that were submitted as well. So it's not that I want to just completely ignore what y'all are saying. But I think for the most part, there's more actionable things to do in lots of other areas. But maybe we can figure something out and do something a bit more targeted towards links in one of the future Hangouts.
okay, thanks.
Famous last words.
John, I have a small question. Actually, I have a website. I was operating a website, and me and my friend. Okay. So what we did was that I just after some time I took over the company, and I had some problem with him getting back to my website, the original one, right? So I bought a new brand. I had a new brand, a new name. So I convinced him to make a 301 redirect to my new website. Okay. Now the problem is that right now the 301 redirect is active, but I'm not sure after some time he may remove it. So will be the impact on the new website or new brand, or it should be alive, the redirect every time? I'm not sure. Like it might be removed after some time. I'm not sure. I don't trust this guy.
OK. I guess that's the hard situation, but at least you have a redirect now. So from our point of view, when we look at 301 redirects and kind of permanent site move situations, we do expect that redirect to be there for the long run. So that could be something maybe a year, ideally even longer than a year, so that we can really be sure that everything that was pointing at the old URLs is now pointing at the new URLs. And also, if users are going to those pages directly through bookmarks that they might have saved, through old links that are out there on the web, then they might still be kind of clicking on those old links, and they expect to land on the final page. So ideally, you would have that redirect there for the long run. I know from a practical point of view, at some point you have to say, oh, it's finished. We can't pay the domain name anymore. The other guy wants to do something else with the domain name. So at some point, you're going to cut that off. But I'd really aim for something at least like a year. And if you have access, you can look at the server logs to see how many people are actually being redirected there. And if you notice after a year, there's still a lot of normal people that are being redirected. But maybe you can figure out, how are they reaching the old domain? Is it like an important link that you forgot to get updated on the web? Is it just lots of people with bookmarks, and you can't really fix their own bookmarks? That's kind of what I would aim for there.
That's
so at least a year.
Problem. Yeah, that's what the main problem that I convinced him for right now. He just transferred it, but I don't have any domain access with me. So that was the thing making me worried about it. So that's why I just asked.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you would have this at least a year, and sometimes you can't control that at all. So sometimes there are legal situations where you say, I can't put anything on my old domain. I can't put a redirect up there, and that's live. You can't fix that, right? So from our point of view, what would happen then is we would probably drop the old domain and treat the new domain as a new site, as a separate site. So that's kind of the extreme situation. Obviously, you, as someone who's running that business, knows that area of it and can probably get things started a lot faster than if you were really starting from scratch. But it's still
making me disappointed. That's because I made it took me 10 years to build that brand, and I'm not like no, it's pretty scary.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the extreme case. But still, those 10 years, you spent a lot of time learning about your users, learning about the customers, how to talk to them, how to reach them. And that's all things that you can reuse if you had to start over again. But at least for the moment, you have that redirect. So you're kind of on the safe side. Just make sure to keep the other guy happy enough that he keeps that redirect upright for maybe a year or so.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hopefully he is not seeing this. We had said you don't trust him.
Yeah, I can't change that now. Maybe you can send him some chocolate.
What's done is done. It's okay.
Yeah. All right.
Hello, John.
Hi.
Hi. I have actually a question about the API.
Okay.
I'm pulling the API, and when I'm pulling stuff more than 5,000 row limit, I'm getting duplicates, and especially when I'm using more than one dimension. I will pull something like 3,000, and then I'm pulling again, and there's more data, but their duplicates are more. So basically, it looks like there's a problem. There's an issue with sorting on your side. I'm not sure exactly what's going on.
I saw your post, and I sent that to the API folks here to kind of take a look there. One of the things that's always kind of playing in with the API, with the requests there, is that we filter out queries that are kind of unique. So we have that in the Help Center as well. And if you request 5,000, it might be that there are 2,000 queries there that we actually filter. So you end up with 3,000. So that's kind of why sometimes when you narrow things down more, you get fewer results because they're like more chunks of it that are so granular that they end up being filtered.
Yeah, but see, when I'm doing the first request, the first 5,000, there are no duplicates there. But when I'm getting the next one, I'm getting, for instance, 9,000. But out of the 9,000, if I'm sorting and seeing which are unique, I'm getting only 8,000 or 7,000 or 6,000. So
Okay.
the next, and I'm not sure whether I'm missing. So my confidence level is going really low.
OK. I will try to get back to you on that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I need to talk with the API folks on that.
Perfect. And we're in New York, so if they need to.
OK.
Hi, could I ask a question?
Sure, go for it.
Thank you. So are you familiar with the Webmasters Google blog posting that mobile interstitials are going to be penalized for Google search?
Yes.
All right. We have this ad that spawns sort of a full page interstitial on exit intent. I can provide a link so you can see what it looks like. But basically, if you try to close it, you've seen those. Those are coming. The question is, do those fall into the full page or interstitial definition?
We just talked about that with the team in the last couple of days.
We asked our account manager to ask, and she said, join this.
Yes, that's the perfect place. So at the moment, those wouldn't count. What we're looking for is really interstitials that show up on the interaction between the search click and going to the page and seeing the content.
Yep.
So that's kind of the place we're looking for those interstitials. What you do afterwards, like if someone clicks on stuff within your website or closes the tab or something like that, then that's kind of between you and the user.
Got it. And
So
does that apply for desktop and mobile? Because the original blog post is just for mobile. We're thinking it applies to both, right?
It applies just to mobile.
Just to mobile, so we can continue running interstitials even though they offend users and not be penalized from a search perspective?
At the moment, yes.
For the time being. And last,
users, if they don't like it, obviously they will react to that as well.
Absolutely, understood.
So I wouldn't recommend doing it, but
neither do we. I'm just getting a couple of facts. Absolutely, definitely hear you. I want to be mindful of everyone's time here. And last question: do you know technically, at a very high level, because I'm not that technical, how Google's crawlers, I'm guessing, are gonna find the full page ads? Are they just gonna see? Are they gonna see that the full page ad is there and they're gonna say, "Oh, this site sucks"? Is it at a high level that?
It's complicated. So
okay.
it's not something where I think there's like this one simple test that we do.
Okay.
But we really want to make sure that we're kind of catching the right things and that we're not flagging the wrong things. So in particular, like cookie interstitials, age interstitials, those things, we need to make sure that those are OK, that we can deal with those anyway. So that's something where it's not that trivial to actually test for.
Is there a place I can read more about it, or it's just not something that's publicly shared?
Not at the moment, just that blog post.
Okay.
So I assume we'll have more when we get closer or when we launch that, but I don't think at the moment we have anything more to share.
Thank you very much.
Sure, thanks.
As you transition with this whole thing going on, so like let's say you're not going to release a time, 25 seconds in, if the user is still seeing it, then you're penalized. I mean, are you going to come up? I don't know. I mean, you'll have to be really detailed with this, no? This penalty.
We're going to try to give at least some more detailed advice on like what specifically we're looking for there. But we're kind of worried that if we say, like, I don't know, one half-page interstitials is fine, and they won't be demoted for that, then all of a sudden the whole web will have just half-page interstitials on it. So we want to make sure that we're kind of not causing more problems than we are trying to help solve.
So like one penalty, like maybe would be like you're reading a journal, like, and then all of a sudden you're into the story, like the first paragraph, and then it says, "Please sign up now," and then you can't even read the story. That would be a penalty, right?
If it's an interstitial, sure,
yeah.
that could be the case. What sometimes also happens is that these stories are essentially just teasers that are available publicly like that, where Googlebot also only sees that first part of the story. And in that case, that's kind of fine from our point of view. Essentially, the full content is visible to both Googlebot and users. So that would be something that would be kind of fine. On the other hand, if Googlebot sees the whole, I don't know, multi-page article and users just see that teaser on top, then that would be essentially cloaking.
OK. Well, you see it now. I mean, there's like one paragraph. And then I'm not sure if Googlebot is seeing whatever, but then it's kind of like blocked. It's pretty much like blocked. And then it says, "Please sign up."
Exactly. That's problematic if Googlebot sees the rest of the content. If Googlebot also is blocked in the same way, that's kind of up to you. I mean, then we can't use the rest of the content for indexing and ranking, but maybe that's enough content for you to kind of show up in search for.
OK, thanks.
All right.
John, one question. Yes. Yeah. I have one client with me, and his website was taken a manual action upon. I don't know. The links were sketchy. I looked at the background, and I found some bad links. OK. So what I did was I just uploaded a disavow file. Basically, all the links were like spammy on like I think 99% of them. So I tried to disavow the maximum I found. OK. So what now I'm feeling is like right now we need to carry on with this campaign. And the problem I'm facing is that will there be something like you call it like if I'll just try to optimize the website, or like I will do it in a natural way, and after some time like it will take longer than the usual time or something like that?
So if it's a manual action based on the links, then someone from the web spam team will take a look at that and see if you're doing the right thing. So that's something where if you're disavowing all of the unnatural links, then that's probably a good thing to do. One thing I'd watch out for there is that you're not just taking the actual URLs, but doing like a domain entry in the disavow file so that all kind of related links are also taken out, if you're sure that like all links from that site are problematic. And that helps the web spam folks as well, where they can look at that and say, oh, they really cleaned everything up. And now they're starting with, I don't know, a fresh slate, or with the links that are actually still good. And then we can kind of release that.
Yeah, and one more question, please. I saw some fluctuations in local searches. Like if my keyword was ranked in the first page, I can see a fluctuation even in the USA itself. For example, if I'll go for California, I will see it on number 3. I will go in New York, and I will see it number 7, something like that. So there's a lot of variation going on. Is it like penguin related or something, or what?
We have a lot of algorithms, so not everything is penguin. We do make changes in local search as well. We do have localization, geo-targeting that happens, so that's certainly possible. There are also lots of experiments that we run all the time. So depending on who is searching and when they're searching, it might be that they fall into one experiment group or another one, or maybe they're in 20 different experiments at the same time. That's kind of something that always happens. So fluctuations are essentially normal part of search.
All right.
May I have a follow-up on this info, please?
Let me run through some of the questions that were submitted, and I'll try to make some room towards the end as well. All right. We use responsive templates for mobile. We have quite a lot of lengthy content on our website, which is fine for desktop as it's presented in usable format. The content, however, visually looks too much from viewing from mobile, and I'm worried about usability. Should I consider a separate mobile site? Or my developer says, alternately, I could pull in different, more concise content in my responsive template. But this content technically will also be displayed to the desktop version, but hidden to Google. Would this cause issues? Would this be deemed hiding content? We probably would see that as hidden content on the desktop version, but what will happen is we'll focus on the visible content there. But ideally, from our point of view, the mobile version of these pages should be equivalent to your desktop version. So if someone goes to the mobile site, they should have the same functionality, the same content, the same images, videos, whatever you provide there, as they would have on the desktop side. Because otherwise, they wouldn't really be matching pages that we could swap out when a user comes with this device or that device. So that's something I really aim for as much as possible, make sure that the same content is available on both. Obviously, layout will be different. So sidebar, footer, navigation, all of those things, they can be very different from mobile to desktop. That's perfectly fine. But the main visible content should be as equivalent as possible. The functionality should be equivalent. So that it's really something where a user can go to either version and they can do whatever they need to do. Google crawled our site a month ago and found 18,404 pages, but we got rid of those pages a few years ago. Is something wrong? Yeah, so I think maybe a month ago, something like that, we had something where Googlebot went off and crawled a bunch of really old pages that we should know don't exist. And that caused a lot of 404 errors. But these 404 errors don't cause any problems on your side in the sense that from a search ranking point of view, we don't care about this. If it's a 404, that's a perfect result code for us. We can kind of ignore that page in the future a little bit and not crawl it as frequently. So that's not something you'd need to take action on and kind of fix those 404 errors if you know that these are really pages that should essentially have been gone.
So John, just to interrupt on them, so there was actually some, again, it didn't necessarily affect anybody, but there was Googlebot kind of went off absent without leave a month or so ago and went a bit crazy around the web, did it? Because obviously I raised this with you, and I think quite a lot of people noticed this, but it was just Googlebot escaped or something, did it?
I don't know. It's like one of those things, you have those flashbacks to how everything was nicer in the past. So Googlebot was like, oh, find this old book of memories of all of these nice web pages that it visited, I don't know, a couple of years ago. But that's something that can theoretically happen from time to time. For the most part, this is something that happens naturally as well. So we'll notice that it's a 404, but that doesn't mean that we stop crawling completely. We'll just start crawling less frequently. So if you have a lot of 404s, if you restructure your website completely, then even a couple of years later, we might say, oh, we'll try to recrawl a few of these URLs just in case something useful has shown up in the meantime.
I mean, I think, yeah, people always see that happening at a kind of a smaller sort of rate. I think it was just more that a month ago, quite a few people suddenly saw it go a bit crazy. I don't think people thought it meant that something was wrong with their site, and I think people appreciate that just because you get a historical legacy 404 doesn't mean that something's wrong, unless of course you do have a lot of broken links internally. But it was just more of that Googlebot going crazy signified anything.
Yeah.
That was all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, some sites had like tons of 404s suddenly, which I can understand looks really confusing. You look at that graph and it's like, oh my God, this big spike of 404 errors. But actually, that's not something that you'd need to kind of take action on. So what I would do in a case like that is look at the top errors there, because they're sorted by priority. And if those errors are really for pages that shouldn't exist at all, then you're pretty much fine. You don't need to check them all individually.
Cool. And also, I think something that Dawn has mentioned to you before as well, what might have upset a number of webmasters is that when that happens with Search Console, they get an email saying, oh my gosh, something might be wrong. You've just got a huge increase in crawl errors, which we got as well. And again, I had a look and there wasn't a problem, but that might have scared the heebie-jeebies out of quite a few people. So it might be better to sort of maybe reword some of those emails or control them a little bit.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I just take a look also, like, I don't know how many of you in this Hangout use Exanu. I take a look at Exanu. I take a look at the other stuff as well. And I can know, hey, this is like fake 404s. These are real 404s. Like, I can actually see the difference there. So you got to, and of course, server logs. So
yeah. I mean, there are lots of ways to look into this. But obviously, if you see a big spike, then you think, oh, something has changed. And maybe that's something I did. Or maybe Google is just, I don't know, drinking too much Kool-Aid and has kind of this sugar high and is like crawling all of this crazy stuff that doesn't actually make sense. But I think it's always good to kind of dig into the details and figure out, is this really an issue on my side, or is this something that is essentially fine? All right. We recovered from a penalty 2 years ago, but no improvements despite vast efforts fixing everything on a site. You said you would check things out on your side. We posted it in the forum as well. Did you manage to have a look? Yes, I did take a look. And from my point of view, some things should be getting a bit better with the Penguin update, for example. And I think you also had the next question here. Our site was hit by Panda in May, and we've since written new content across the whole site and added value where possible. And it kind of goes on into general Panda questions. As Panda is a site-wide ranking demotion, if we were to carry on improving content, can Panda be lifted in stages if it sees an improvement? Yes, this is something that is more kind of granular in the sense that when we recognize that things are improving slightly, we will improve things on our side as well with regards to understanding how relevant your site is for specific queries. And then second part here is any advice and tips for getting out of Panda. What can we do to know that we're on the right track? That's obviously a bit harder. The one post I always point to is that blog post by Amit Singhal a couple of years back with 23 questions that you can ask yourself that are also, I think, really relevant to go through with a bunch of users. So find people who are not related to your website and have them complete some tasks on your website, on competing websites, and then go through these questions and try to get as honest answers as possible with regards to how they feel about your website. And this is something that I find is always eye-opening in the sense that sometimes you'll find like really weird usability issues. Sometimes you'll find small things that you think are really fancy, and users look at it and they say, oh, I don't know if I can trust this website. It has this weird animated GIF in the corner. So sometimes there are small things that come out there. Sometimes there are really big things. But I would take, especially the more neutral the feedback you can get, the more I would take that into account and figure out what you can do to improve. And you can also use that to test different parts of your website. Maybe do an A/B test with these users and say, hey, which of these pages do you think is more trustworthy? Or which of these pages would you, as a user, use to rent tools or to buy something from? So obviously, there's no meta tag that you can just add to your pages for that. But there is a lot of work that you can put in to kind of improve that step by step. Should you ever get rid of content on an e-commerce site, and some of it is quite general across pages, this info which users can find, but it saves them from having to always look for? Can it be deemed spammy? So I'm not particularly sure which type of content you're talking about there with regards to e-commerce sites, so it's hard to say. One thing I do see a lot on e-commerce sites is that they essentially fill the bottom of the page with random text, essentially. So it's obviously not completely random, but it's like paragraphs and paragraphs of tiny text that are describing all of the products and services that you provide, with links going to internal parts of your site. And from our point of view, we're probably already discounting most of that. So removing that probably speeds things up for your users, and it's not going to be a loss for your users, and probably not going to be a loss for search engines as well. Figure out the context of your site from the rest of the page. So that's something where maybe it makes sense to look at your website, scroll all the way down on the category pages, and if you have this big chunk of text on there that's essentially like 3 Wikipedia articles copied together on that topic, then maybe that's something you don't need to keep for the long run. From our point of view, if we're already ignoring it, you're probably not going to see a big change there. But especially if you're working on maintaining your website, if you're doing moves, changes, reorganizations on your website, that's not something that you need to keep. It just kind of adds an extra burden for you that doesn't provide any value to users nor to search engines. If you have an e-commerce site, does Google give more trust to those sites that are on HTTPS, or do they just get the very slight ranking benefit, like if all sites were equal? So we don't differentiate between e-commerce websites and other websites when it comes to HTTPS. So any website that has HTTPS has that subtle ranking boost that we apply there. It's not something that we would do differently just because it's an e-commerce site or not an e-commerce site. There are lots of reasons why you could use HTTPS, and they're not always tied to like just this entering of the credit card number step. It's essentially, on the one hand, you're authenticating that this is really your website, that this is really the content that you're providing. You're making sure that the content arrives at the user, that it's not something that's modified by the user. So we sometimes see that in, for example, public Wi-Fi. If you go to airports and they have public Wi-Fi, then sometimes you'll see the Wi-Fi is adding a banner on top of your content with ads on it. And if you're looking at your website and someone is able to insert their own ads into your website, that's probably not something you want to have done. And with HTTPS, you can kind of prevent that. And then finally, of course, there's the encryption of the transmission, in the sense that nobody in between can listen in, which is, of course, relevant for e-commerce because you're transferring the user's private data to your server and giving them information back. But it's really not the case that HTTPS is only valid for e-commerce site. It's relevant for all kinds of websites. Our affiliate site is looking to improve the quality of product pages. We've written fresh description, added technical specs, added a video, FAQs, added links to internal articles on the page subject. But a lot of this is behind tabs, so it's devalued. Can this be the reason why they're not ranking very well if everything else on the site seems OK? Further tips on adding affiliates adding value. So it's really hard to say what specifically you should be doing on an affiliate website to add value. All of these items sound good to me. They provide extra value. If you think that this is enough value that it's really the primary differentiator between your website and others that have the same products, then I would certainly make sure that this content is visible at first glance, so that when users come to your website, they see that there's really a difference between your affiliate website and maybe the 500 others that have the same product feed as well. So that's something where providing extra value is really important. Making sure that this extra value is really visible to the user is, of course, also very important. You now say that JSON LD is your preferred markup. Why is that? Is there any benefit from changing over from one to the other supported types? So we think, or we see a lot of people using JSON LD. So that's why we've kind of switched to preferring that slightly. We still accept pretty much, I think, all types of structured data in the other formats as well. I suspect going forward, at some point, we will say JSON LD is a format that we really strongly recommend. And maybe some of the newer types of structured data will only be available in JSON LD. That's a possibility. But obviously, you can mix and match. So if you're currently using microformats or whatever else, then there's no need from a search point of view to switch to something like JSON LD if everything is working well for you. If your rich snippets are showing already, you don't need to kind of change the vocabulary and the format that you're providing there. Is the amount of PageRank and the impact of links from external sites dampened by the site quality of receiving site? Like if my site is lower quality, it won't receive the same benefits from links as if my site were high quality. I don't think we differentiate there in that regard. So usually we try to separate the individual parts of the algorithms a little bit so that we can look at links separately from quality itself. Can optimizing the alt text for images benefit normal search results ranking, or is the ranking signal from a just for image search? I believe we also use part of the text on the page. So in that regard, we would also pick that up there. But for the most part, we pick up enough information about the page from the rest of the content on the page. So usually there's not a need to stuff extra information into the alt text. I'd really try to use the alt text for what it was really made for kind of helping describe the image that is there, rather than to stuff additional keywords in there that you might not have visible on the page itself. Someone said my site looked over-optimized. I use a keyword phrase in my title tag and H1 tag. My H2 uses a variant of the H1 and title tag. And my on-page content mentions my keyword phrase a couple of times. What do you think? Do we need to turn things down? So it sounds like you're focusing quite a bit on these keywords, just from like hearing where you're placing it and what you're doing with the keywords there. Sometimes that's a sign that you're maybe focusing too much on the keywords and not writing naturally, in the sense that when a user were to read your page aloud, they might feel this is kind of a weird type of English and not really something that they would find as natural text. So sometimes that's a sign. I think looking at your website as well, this was something similar to what I mentioned before, in that on some e-commerce sites, if you look at the category pages and you scroll down, you have this big chunk of text on the bottom that mentions all of the keywords within like normal text that's written out. And for the most part, that's something that you wouldn't need. Like I mentioned before, we can figure out the context of your pages without this big chunk of text on the bottom. And that's sometimes something that people, when they look at your website, might see as being over-optimized, because you're like including those keywords and those variations in like 5 different sentences in the same paragraph, just to make sure that you've mentioned all of those variations. And that's really not something that you need to do. From our point of view, for the most part, we just ignore those kind of texts. But you can obviously clean that up yourself on your side.
John, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
It's about structured data markup. For one of our clients, we're using Google Tag Manager. to kind of scrape the page and find out product's price, if it's in stock or not, the title and everything else, and including the reviews. Problem is with the reviews, they're using Yotpo. It's a plugin for websites to show reviews and users to leave reviews. The problem is the plugin loads last. It's through a JavaScript. And so I have to wait for the window to be completely loaded before I use the tag manager to get the review rating, the number of reviews, and so on. So I implemented that. It seems to work, but with the structured data markup, I cannot see it showing up, though with view source it is there, and the Search Console says it does detect it. It's just it doesn't seem to appear in the structured data test tool. And I was wondering, it's too early to tell if it's going to show up in the search results because I just implemented it like yesterday or 2 days ago. So I just wondered whether it's maybe a problem with the structured data test tool, or should I just look at Search Console and trust what it's there?
As far as I know, the structured data testing tool doesn't render the pages completely. So that's probably where you're seeing that difference. One thing you can do that can give you a little bit more peace of mind is to put a script on those pages that displays the structured data within the text, maybe in a larger font, on a test page. So that when you use fetch and render, you have kind of this text that's pulled out from the JavaScript visible on the page if all of that is processed actually through rendering. So that's kind of a way to double check, does rendering actually pick up all of that extra markup that I have there that I don't actually see on the page otherwise? Obviously, just for a test page, and not something that you would keep live because that would look really weird. But as a test, that's kind of a way to hack that.
So theoretically, I should see it in the rendered view, but not in the fetch view.
Exactly.
Yeah, OK. Yeah, that's a good idea. Thanks.
All right. Let me grab some more questions here that were submitted, and then we can open things up for more questions from all of you. We have an old and big website with over 10 million pages. Recently, we discovered that content that was published during 2011, 2013 ranks 3 times better than newer content. With the same quality, same linking, HTML implementation. We thought that this was a result of content aging, but then we analyzed traffic for the last 3 years, and it looks like those pages were always successful. Could it be that when old pages were published, we had a higher website authority or something that Google memorized and we don't have anymore? Or for new pages, Google is applying more strict rules than for old content? So it's really hard to say without looking at the actual situation there. But in general, when we have something that's kind of like a site-wide score, then the current site-wide score applies to everything for that website. So from my point of view, we don't have anything like a website authority score. But if we did have something like that, or if we have, like when we're looking at, for example, like quality signals that are more site-wide, then that's something that applies across the whole website in the state that it's at now. So it's not the case that we would say, oh, 5 years ago you had this score for your website, therefore your content will be rated like this forever. But rather, we look at your website overall now, and we apply the current score to all of your pages on the website. So that's kind of what we do when it comes to site-wide signals.
John, can I just ask a question on that? I mean, there's the Panda side of this as well, where there is kind of a punitive or time delay type of side of it as well, where presumably Google is looking for some evidence that if someone has been producing low-quality content, that they can't just suddenly fix it and immediately it kind of recovers. So how would that kind of relate to what you just said? Because there's a site-wide score, but presumably there would also be some kind of history in that as well?
Well, I mean, there's always history there, because we can't recrawl the whole website now. So we can't recalculate the current quality score now. It's always based on what has happened in the past. So that's definitely something that kind of gets collected over time. But that's the current score based on our understanding of the current website, which, of course, that understanding is based on things that have happened in the past. So it's not so much that the score that we had maybe, I don't know, last year is applied to different parts of the website, but rather as we understand the website now, the current score based on that is what we apply across the website now.
But if a site had a quality issue, say 2 years ago, and therefore they were, for example, hit by Panda, then presumably there is still some, and they're still hit by Panda today, even if they cleaned up 6 months, a year ago, then presumably there is still some element of that poor quality score being applied at the current time, isn't there? So there is effectively that happening. No?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm kind of confused, but more by the question. In the sense that like the current score that we have now, because for Panda, this is something that's kind of rolling anyway, so we'd have a more up-to-date understanding of the website now. And we look at the website overall as we see it now, and then we apply essentially our current understanding of that and use that to create the score. So it's not so much that like your site was hit by Panda 2 years ago, therefore that part of the website will forever be hit by that Panda. It's that this maybe happened 2 years ago, and if we look at your website overall now, which might be this big or much bigger chunk where a lot of this stuff is really good quality content, then overall our understanding might be, oh, this is actually a pretty good website. So it won't be that we'll say, oh, but this stuff here was available 2 years ago and it was bad. We'll essentially look at the current full status.
Okay.
I have one related to this too.
OK.
So this site-wide metrics, or whatever you call them, are they considering average score or cumulative? So something like that. I have a site, I have 100 quality articles on it. All of them are quality, high quality, and I have another subdomain with another 100 quality articles on them. Does Google see them as two sites with only high quality articles, or does Google would better see it if they would be on a single domain, as in, yeah, they are still all of them high quality, but there are 200 of them, not only 100. So it will be better if there are more, or they just take average. So
that's hard to say. So we try to understand, especially with subdomains, we try to understand, is this one website or is this multiple independent websites? So maybe we are already treating those two subdomains as one website. The other aspect of 200 pages or 2 times 100 pages, in general, I recommend folding things together and putting things on one strong website, because that's something where you can kind of concentrate all of the information that we have about your website onto one domain or one website, which makes it a lot easier for you to maintain and also makes it easier for us to understand, like, overall, this is a really strong website. So ideally, I'd recommend folding things together into fewer websites or one website if that's possible. Sometimes that doesn't make sense. Sometimes that doesn't make sense for maybe marketing reasons or for legal or policy reasons that you can't put everything on one website. But for the most part, I think you gain a lot more out of having one strong website rather than having lots of independent websites.
OK, does this it still stays true, for example, if you have a different cookieless domain where you store images? So the page loads faster because there are 2 different domains, no cookies, no.
That's essentially independent for us. So for web search, we look at the web search landing pages, and the embedded content, it doesn't matter where you pull that from. So if you have that from different domains, cookieless domains to kind of deliver them fast, if you use a CDN for your images and your web pages come directly from the server, that's totally up to you. That's not something where we would say 2 domains. We really focus on the web pages themselves.
So the images wouldn't rank lower in image search because they are not an authority domain?
No.
OK, thank you a lot.
I have a NAMP question.
OK.
when does that little flash? When is that like? Because I've seen it like in my area. I'm just checking geolocation, so like different areas, like Utah, I saw it in Texas, but Toronto, let's say from like 10 websites, I only saw one site that had it, even though, you know, like
Which symbol do you mean?
the app. So like, let's say a WordPress website that has fixed all the errors, you know, has done everything like in terms of their site identity, in terms of like pretty much everything that needs to be corrected, fix the schema, because by default app creates like a markup like that says blog post, but the site was like also like a news article website, so that's been changed as well. But how long does it take till that AMP little photo show up saying that to the user on mobile, this website is AMP ready or whatever?
That should be almost immediate. So
Really?
if we see that AMP HTML link and we can recognize the AMP page is valid, that should be essentially immediate. It's like in the order of, I don't know, minutes, ideally, because when we find that AMP HTML link, we'll try to recrawl that AMP page essentially immediately.
So the little thing will, the little gray image will show up saying it's AMP?
Yeah. But it depends, on the one hand, on where you're seeing this. So you obviously need to have a mobile device, one that supports AMP. I don't know if that's like on all devices. It looks like you have one. The other thing is, I don't know if we've rolled that out into all countries yet, or if there may be like some countries where this is available already and some countries where it isn't. So that's something where you almost want to maybe check the google.com view and check the US search results. So with in the URL, if you can modify that with &GL equals US, I believe that pulls up the US search results.
Huh, OK. So, OK, well, I'll check that out. And then so regarding the carousel, that's just algorithmic, yeah? Yeah,
exactly. So the carousel obviously needs that news article or blog posting markup with the image and all of that. The normal search results, we can swap those out for AMP as well, but you don't need to have any of that markup on those pages.
So it's algorithmically it chooses it, yeah? Like it's not somebody sitting there and just pressing.
Oh my God, no, we don't have that many people.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
No, yes, no, yes, no, no.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, John.
All right, we have a couple minutes left. Maybe I'll just open it up for you all. What else is on your mind?
John, one small question.
Okay.
Yeah, the main thing is like I was focusing on a small, like if you have a local business, okay, so is there any kind of location kind of filter so that if some people around me or in my country, they are trying to link on my website, this gonna be having a huge impact instead of people which are trying to link to my website out of my country or something like that? Is there an impact difference or it carries the same weight?
It's essentially the same. I mean, obviously, every link is not the same, but it doesn't matter by country or by language. That's something I've seen in the past people worry about a bit too much, in that they look at the links to their site and they're like, oh, here's this link from this Chinese website, and the web page that's linking to me is all in Chinese. This must be spam. And that's obviously not the case. So we take those links into account just as well. Obviously, for anchor text, it's a lot harder for us. If the language doesn't match, then we have to kind of figure out like what we need to do with that. But otherwise, we don't really care about the language or the location where these links are from.
Even if the website is not even like, if, for example, my website is in English only, and the link I'm getting is from a Spanish website or something like that. Maybe it's natural or something like that.
That still can happen. That can happen. I mean, obviously, it doesn't mean that all of these links are perfectly fine. That's also a common tactic that we've seen, I don't know, in the last 10, 20 years on the web, where people will go off and like find I don't know, crazy Japanese forums where people get no followed or followed links, and they just send their script there to post links to the site. And then obviously, it's not so much a matter that this is a Japanese site, but that someone sends a script there and makes all of these links there manually.
All right. Thanks, John.
So that's it there. Basically, so Penguin has relaxed, took a break, and now there'll be no more questions, I guess, in this Hangout about Penguin. But so it's officially real time, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So
I don't know about no more questions.
Well,
Hi, John.
Is that a promise?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's real time. That's it.
OK. All right, go for it.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, John, actually, today I saw some very weird kind of issue in my website where a pre-production URL where I have used canonical tag to my main website. Due to some issues, I am not able to use no follow no index kind of things. But I have, this is completely the identical page and I am using my parent website canonical in pre-prod URL. But this URL is coming when I am typing in Google my brand name. So as site link, this URL is coming there. So the problem with me is that I am not able to demote this link in search analytics now. And this URL is getting too much traffic because this is coming up in brand name search query.
Then that's something where I might use the URL removal tool to clean that out. But
today I have used it.
I need to talk a bit more about, but I need to go. So we'll have to catch up on that the next time. Make sure to put that in the next Hangout, and then we can pick that up. Or if you have a forum thread, I can pick that up there too.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, I have added it in URL to removal.
All right. OK.
Thanks, John.
Thanks a lot, everyone, for all of your questions. I hope that was useful, and I'll see you again in one of the future Hangouts.
Bye,
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, John.
Thank you, John.